with your cloud subscription platform, where you can see these extra benefits for it at no cost. So they're there right now. If you guys are familiar with your Cloud IQ and have been in there since November, you just pop right in there. You'll see those items that are shown on the left pane, and all you have to simply do is enable that feature, do a little bit of configuration for it, which is pretty minimal for it, and then you can move on from there and start using those features and functionality out of it. But ultimately what it is when we're looking across the Extreme Essentials portfolio, these are these applications that are being brought into Cloud IQ Pilot, again, at no cost, to help solve some of these use cases that we have. So we have locationing built into Cloud IQ, but now we want to expand on that, and we want to show asset tracking users, and pathfinding analytics. And we also have Guest Essentials that we added in there, where we were doing guest management and registration. We have a form of that within Cloud IQ Pilot itself, but now we're expanding that on even further with the Essentials application, providing more management, more registration, more analytics for it. And then IoT Essentials is a great way to help control the IoT onboarding of devices with your access points, rather than having to have all those IoT devices funnel through your IT organization. You can offload that burden off to like a help desk at a building, or even maybe some of the management personnel at those sites, that when these devices are coming in, you can have them securely connect into an access point. We can assign them a role, and then we can limit how those IoT devices can interact with the network. But as we're talking about it here today, what we're going to talk about is for AirDefense Essentials, which is basically a WIZ-WIPS functionality that we built even further into Cloud IQ with additional features and functionalities. And we took a little piece of that from the enterprise piece of software, cloudified it, brought it into Extreme Cloud IQ. And ultimately what this is doing is, across the cloud platform with the essential applications, we're getting a consistent user experience across all these applications, so that when you're in Cloud IQ, you can easily move from one program to another for this feature for analytics, this feature for WIZ-WIPS, AirDefense, this feature for locationing. It's all there. It's all a consistent experience across the whole platform. Now, again, for the purpose of today's call, we're going to be talking about Extreme AirDefense Essentials, which is really a big security top of mind for customers that are in the industry, because we're seeing all these devices being connected into the edge via wireless or the wired connectivity. But as we see those devices being connected into the edge, we need a way to identify security risks and breaches and rogue access points and everything else like that that may come along with this, to help keep your environment being secure. So again, the Essentials application is really taking a piece of our AirDefense enterprise piece of software, bundling it up, cloudifying it, and then we're making this available for free for you guys within your Cloud IQ Pilot subscription. And this piece of software has been the industry leading standard for over 15 years. And the next slide that we have, we'll talk about a lot of the industry first that AirDefense introduced into the industry. But a lot of the other competitors out there, they take WIZ-WIPS as a checkbox. You go into your platform, you click a checkbox, you get basic rogue access point detection, but you can't do anything further beyond that. Where we want to give you something more than that, more than just a checkbox, and take a little bit of the enterprise software, put it on there, so you get a usable piece of security software that you can help manage and identify security risks in your environment. So we can do rogue access point detection. We can do even termination and mitigation of those. And we can also watch the air for up to 42 different security threats for wireless exploits, security exploits, things of those nature, where we can get visibility into those items so that we know what's happening on the Wi-Fi and we can take action upon it. When we're talking about AirDefense, this has really been the industry-leading WIZ-WIPS piece of software for the last 15 years, and what the AirDefense Essentials is based off of. But AirDefense was first developed for the Department of Defense about 15 to 20 years ago. And there's a list of firsts here up here on the screen, which I'm not going to read through. But ultimately, this is what we are bringing into the cloud. We're bringing a little piece of this into the cloud, and then we can build upon it further. So out of the box with AirDefense Essentials, again, we have 42 different identifying items, which we'll talk about here in a future slide. But once we get into the full AirDefense Enterprise version, there we can identify up to 325, with the most latest ones coming in there being related to BLE vulnerabilities and how we can help protect the BLE, because all of our access points nowadays have a BLE radio on it, and we're seeing some attacks and threats come into the industry about how security people are starting to leverage that to gain access into the network. So we have that in our portfolio now as well. So the use cases for AirDefense Essential are pretty straightforward. Network protection is the basic protection against rogues. We want to identify those rogue access points, but we also want to be able to mitigate those. So we give you that feature within the AirDefense Essentials. Nowadays, access points and rogues do not need to be necessarily plugged right into the hardwired network, so they're becoming a little bit more difficult to monitor and to mitigate those. And this is where we get into the monitoring airspace, where you could have a device out there that is broadcasting a hotspot similar to that of what your corporate network is, but ultimately they're doing a man-in-the-middle attack, and your devices will start to connect to that device rather than to your corporate network. There's a security risk there. And then also from the user perspective, you'll just get a help desk call coming in saying, hey, the Wi-Fi is not doing well, it's not working, and then you're going to be directed into start troubleshooting the Wi-Fi. You're going to start looking down to the network space. You're going to see that the Wi-Fi is totally fine. You're going to see that the network is totally fine, but without the visibility into that, you would not be able to identify that this is in fact a security risk and not a networking issue. So that ultimately affects the quality of experience of the clients that are being connected onto the network. And we need to have that extra flexibility to be able to identify that stuff and then take action on those items as we see fit. And security assessment, threat analysis, we need to have identifying and easily ways so that we can look at sites in your organization, do comparative analytics, well, which ones may be the highest risk as far as security exploits and vulnerabilities and what we're seeing in the air. And then so we can go there and take some action on that. So if that means starting off with AirDefense Essentials and then graduating into the full AirDefense Enterprise version, we can do that, but we give you the functionality to identify those items within your cloud platform today, and then even be able to go a step further to see what's actually on there and what those actually mean within your environment. Now, the features on here are pretty broad, and I think we have a very generous amount of wireless threats and features that are in the AirDefense Essentials application, which again is free within Cloud IQ Pilot. So not only do we have rogue access point detection and client detection, but also rogue access point termination. So if we see those pop up on your network, we can terminate that and kind of, reduce how many clients may try to connect into that. But then again, you can see all the items on the right-hand side of the screen here of the other threats that are built into AirDefense Essentials. So as you start to roll this feature out and enable it, which we'll show you here in a live demo in just a minute, about how easily this is to set it up, that you'll immediately start to get that visibility and analysis of items that are happening on your wireless network. Now, if there is scenarios that we need to go into the full enterprise version of AirDefense, we do have a way to kind of migrate you over that. So AirDefense Essentials built into Cloud IQ. If you have a cloud subscription right now, you can go in there, just enable it. You have to do 2 minor sets beforehand, but I'll outline that here in a second. And then as you start to gather all that information and analysis and the alarms and trends and just gather that visibility in general, this is where you can then graduate into the full AirDefense Essentials, which is an extra add-on license, but it brings those extra 300 events and threats that you can detect on your network, advanced forensics, you can locating rogues with location services, compliance reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the areas where once you get into the more advanced features of where you want to graduate into the AirDefense Enterprise platform for full widgets functionality. So from here, I'm going to hop right into the live demo. I'm going to show you guys how we can set up AirDefense Essentials within your cloud platform. And then I'll go into a short little demo of what I have set up in my home lab environment here. So let's get right into it. Let me just swap out my screen here. So here I have a cloud instance where I have a single access point on there. I made a basic network policy, and there's a couple things that we need to do prior to enabling the AirDefense subscription. So if we click on Configure Network Policies, we see I have just a simple network policy here. Set up for wireless. I set up one wireless SSID, which you don't really need that for here, but what you actually need to do is to go into these additional settings, scroll down here on the left, click WIPs, and then enable that, and then create a WIPs policy. So I'm going to give this a name, WIPs policy. We want to enable wireless threat detection. We want to enable rogue access point detection. You can check these boxes here to see if access points are actually connected to your wired network. So that's another item that you can base that off of. And then how you're going to detect rogue access points based off their Mac UI. You know, you obviously don't want our access points to classify our other access points as being rogues, right? That would be bad. So we can go through here, and a lot of the cloud access point Mac UIs are in here by default, so we can eliminate that. You can also go a step further, that if you wanted to see which SSIDs are being broadcasted with which encryption type, that will help you prevent from having your corporate SSID being broadcasted with an open network, which we know that would be bad, and that's a very obvious attempt at trying to make a man-in-the-middle attack within your organization. So we can limit that. And then we can also do the rogue client reporting here, enable that so we can find some rogue clients. So that's all we really need for the WIPs policy. We can save that. And then the other item that we have to do is now enable the sensor on the radio itself. So going back into device templates, I'm going to make a device template for a 410C. So we're going to do this. We're going to say AP 410C template. Now, the main thing here is that on the Wi-Fi 2 radio, which is a sensor, we want to enable that, and then we can just put in some IP address here. It doesn't matter for this specifically. The server and the port do not really relate to anything when we're talking about AirDefense Essentials, but we can't have these blanks. So you can put in something internal if you want. You can put in some random port in here. It doesn't really matter. We just have to populate those two boxes. So we'll click Save on that. We'll click Next. And if we go back to the devices here, we'll see that these changes are pending. And we can push those out to the access points. We can see that here. Click that. We'll update this device, push down a Delta configuration. And then that update is going to get pushed out to the access point. Now that we have the WIPs policy defined in our network policy and the template created that is now enabling that third sensor radio on that access point, we can go down to the AirDefense section here, which is these four right now. Here are these essential applications that we have. Click on Extreme AirDefense, and you'll be presented with this page here. Now, the button over here on the right, subscribe, is a little misleading. It's not like you're going to get charged for anything extra. We should just have that, be worded to like enable or something like that. But ultimately, what you want to do is just click subscribe on that. You'll see your WIPs policy that you just created here. Make sure that's on. Hit apply, and then you're ready to go. So once we have that, the dashboard will start popping up here. It takes a little bit of time to populate. So I'm going to pop over to my home instance here, give this a little refresh so we can start to go through some of the features that we get right within AirDefense Essentials. So right off the bat on this dashboard for AirDefense Essentials, we can see the alarms overview. We can filter these in and out based off of what the alarm types we want to see. We have alarm count by severity. We have the location right here in the map and the threats that it has. So if you have multiple locations, you'll be able to see this on a single map. Click into there, and then you'll be able to see what exactly that we have for threats and detection within this organization. Going down here, we do see alarm by device type. So you can see that BSSSs are the cause of 15 devices, wireless clients are 3, and none of the sensor radios, that is as expected. We can see how many of the frequent alarms that we have. So the rogue access points, the ID theft, the clients, the denial of service disassociations, and then we can see how many the alarm points by location. So if we have multiple locations there, we'll be able to kind of see the difference there. Down by alarm distribution by categories, we can see a good overall indication of what type of categories and exploits that we have. This rogue exploits is pretty high there, so let's drill into that. Clicking into more insights will bring up this additional dashboard where we can then drill into all these threats that we saw from the overview dashboard from before. Now, by default, this is set to be the live view, where these are all of the current open alarms that we have on your network. Now, I have my sensor down in my home lab in my basement, and I have a whole bunch of different access points broadcasting all this stuff. So I see a lot of activity with rogue access points on my instance here. And if we wanted to go back into a point in time, we can click on this expired and then select this point in time. Let's say we'll go back a week, and we'll select what this big jump in alarms was right there. And this will filter it down to just that point in time where we can see we had some ID thefts, some denial of service, and that looks like about it for right now. But let's go back into the live view here. We can see all of the current alarms that are happening on my network. We can filter this out by certain categories. If we want to see what this denial association means, we can click this and see when that alarm was first seen, when it became inactive, and this is typically a configured time frame where we would just see that thing stop and we time out, it would get marked inactive because we're not seeing it on the wireless network anymore. So it's a semi-automated way to manage the alarms that you have within your environment. If you know that this is no longer active or you have addressed it, you can click clear alarm and that'll clear that alarm, or drill right into the DOS, this association description, so you can get expert knowledge about what this alarm means, so that how you can investigate it further. Now, the first one that kind of raises a mind here is this ID theft or sequence. You're like, is my ID being stolen right now? But it's not actually that case once you dig into it. So for this ID theft or sequence here, we can see that it isn't active. So it was an active alarm. It went through its process. It eventually timed out. It was no longer seeing on the network. But we can see what sensor was being reported, what the wireless client is. And now we can go in there and try to adjust that. But when we're talking about ID theft or sequence, what does that mean really? Well, going into the export help, we'll see that that's actually like a MAC, like a duplicate MAC. So there's a MAC spoofing attack that was going on my home network here on purpose, because I have some utilities that'll do that for me, so I can bring up some of these alarms and show you some real world diagnosis and information here. But ultimately what this is, I have this one MAC address that's being spoofed on my network, pretending to be a different client to gain access to the network. And that's bad, right? We want to prevent those things. So now that we have that information, we can track that client down, blacklist them, do whatever we need to do to make sure that they cannot get into the network and start to infiltrate the network through these wireless threats here. And then the last one here that I want to hit on is this rogue access point. You can see here that yesterday this thing popped up, and it was 3:45 when I fired up my home lab at home here. Click on rogue access point. We can see what the sensor was being related on. I only have one sensor in this home network here for this demo here. We can see what the BSS ID of the rogue access point is, and we can see some status for it. So if we want to clear that, we know that we got it off the network, we can hit clear. If we want to terminate that, we can hit the terminate button. That will prevent other clients from joining that rogue access point that is within your environment. So with that, that is the basic rundown of Extreme Networks Essentials AirDefense. If you have any questions, feel free to pop it up here into the panel. Chris, can you help me out? Did we have any questions while I was talking there?
Actually, I'm on the chat, and no questions had been posted. I think you did a great job of covering the features and functions of AirDefense Essentials. I think what's really unique is that this application does give a customer a different set of visibility around some of the security issues that can happen in your wireless environment. And I think that's very positive. But at the same time, if you have compliance requirements and things like that, Rob, you also shared with us the full-blown capabilities of air defense and understanding what we could deliver from that standpoint. I think at the end of the day, if I'm a customer and I'm not sure that I need this, Essentials is a great application to get started with it. And then as compliancy or if issues occur, you might want to look at the full-blown product. And if you want that, reach out to Rob or myself. We'll be glad to get an evaluation copy off to you. You can download a copy for a few weeks or a month or two. I think it's a 60-day evaluation, right, Rob? And they
yeah, we can make that work.
And it allows you to address those issues and then show to your company what kind of reporting and compliancy requirement information you can gather from the full-blown product. With that, is there any other questions? We've got one in the Q&A. I'll put it up. We have AeroHive 250s and 650s, and they have only 2 radios. Can they use the tools with APs like that have only 2 radios? Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, very soon. So right now, Air Defense Essentials is only supported on the AP410C because that's our tri-radio Wi-Fi 6 access point. However, the functionality is coming into the 650s and 510s here, I believe very soon. It might be at the next update, which I think is a few weeks out. And then at that time, we can enable like an SDR type of profile, or where we have high interference with 2.4, we can repurpose that 2.4 radio into being a sensor for Air Defense Essentials. So that functionality is coming for the 650s or 510s here very soon. It's just right around the corner. But the initial release was for the 410Cs.
Mm-hmm. So our tri-radios, that 410C, did the 460 with the tri-radio also have the ability?
I think so. I believe so, yes.
So.
I mean, they're basically the same access point, but outdoor.
Right. So thank you on that. That's a great question. We have intention to make sure that if you have a dual radio as opposed to a tri-radio, that you'll be able to utilize this. And then from that standpoint, stay tuned as we provide more updates over time. Those are all the questions we have right now. Any other piece, maybe just as a quick summary, Rob? We are going to host 4 different essentials overviews. One was today on air defense. We're going to be adding location essentials, guest essentials, and IoT essentials, since those are all products that are live. And those will be over the next several weeks. So stay tuned, and if you'd like to, please sign up for that. If I don't see any more questions, I think this will be a conclusion to our update today. And thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Rob. Great job.